Ladies and gentlemen, there are 3 articles that I will put below in the pinned comment. These are 3 articles that you can share with anyone who says, oh, well, mail-in ballots, no problem. We've never had a problem with them, and Trump is, lying as always. This is the Miami New Times. Florida Republicans, ballot fraud, 2012. October 11th, 2012. That article was written on October 11th, 2012. Then there's a Slate article that I read yesterday. Voter fraud exists. Republican restrictions won't stop it. That goes into, this is 2016. The vast majority of voter fraud prosecutions touted by conservatives, by conservative groups like the Heritage Foundation involve absentee ballots that were illegally cast. And the only voting fraud schemes with the potential to actually swing elections involve mail-in ballots, not impersonation at the polls. This makes sense. It's much easier to forge a signature, impersonate a voter, or buy a vote in the privacy of one's home than it is in a voting booth at the polls. That's a Slate article in 2016. So we'll get to President Trump suing the state of Nevada. But this is a great article right here. See, all you have to do is type in mail-in fraud Republicans 2012 or 2008, or just go back in time just a little bit. It's all ancient history to Democrats. So whatever the propaganda spin is, mail-in and absentee ballots are the same. Well, then we have a big problem. Houston, we have a problem. Because there's a New York Times article, a Slate article, a Miami New Times article, one in 2016, one in 2012. This one is in 2012. Errors and fraud at issue as absentee voting rises. Tallahassee, Florida. This is the New York Times by Adam Liptak, October 6, 2012. This is exactly why President Trump is suing Nevada. Tallahassee, Florida. On the morning of the primary here in August, the local election board met to decide which absentee ballots to count. It was not an easy job. The board tossed out some ballots because they arrived without the signatures required on the outside of the return envelope. It rejected one that said, "See inside," where the signature should have been. And it debated what to do with ballots in which the signature on the envelope did not quite match the one in the county's files. Okay? Democrats were trying to go after Kanye West, saying, he didn't get the number of signatures needed to be on the ballot in, which state was it? Was it Illinois or no? It was New Jersey, I think. This R is not like the R. It is not like that R, Judge Augustus D. Akins Jr. said, suggesting that a ballot should be rejected. Okay, so Ian Sancho, the election supervisor here, disagreed. The K is like that K, he replied, and he persuaded his colleagues to count the vote. Scenes like this will play out in many elections next month because Florida and other states are swiftly moving from voting at a polling place toward voting by mail. In the last general election in Florida in 2010, 23% of voters cast absentee ballots, up from 15% in the midterm election 4 years before. Nationwide, the use of absentee ballots and other forms by voting by mail has more than tripled since 1980 and now accounts for almost 20% of all votes. Okay. Yet votes cast by mail are less likely to be counted, more likely to be compromised, and more likely to be contested than those cast in a voting booth, statistics show. Election officials reject almost 2% of ballots cast by mail, double the rate for in-person voting. This is interesting. The more people you force to vote by mail, the election officials said, the more invalid ballots you will generate. Can you believe this? You just have to look just a couple years ago. 8 years ago. And it's like Democrats erase history. That's all they do. The media, and it's so, like, if you have one brain cell left in your cranium, it's so easy to debunk the nonsense from liberals and a great many progressives and the left in general and Democrats and media and Hollywood. It's so easy. It takes like less than a second to go to the Google and simply type in, well, if Democrats are saying one thing, type in, Republicans mail-in, and you'll get articles. They're cheating via the mail-in vote. And that's what you get. So I'm reading this article right here. Errors and fraud at issue as absentee voting rises. Election experts say the challenges created by mailed ballots could well affect outcomes this fall and beyond. If the contests next month are close enough to be within what election lawyers call the margin of litigation, the grounds on which they will be fought will not be hanging chads, but ballots cast away from the voting booth. No wonder Democrats were so interested in getting a whole bunch of attorneys on their side for this election. The trend will probably result in more uncounted votes, and it increases the potential for fraud. This is interesting. This is this article, along with the Slate article that I read, I mean, President Trump should tweet this, and maybe it's because they're focusing on Republican fraud via mail-in ballots, but he should simply tweet this. So I think what Democrats are going to do, and that's why he's suing Nevada, he just sent out a message a couple hours ago saying, look, this election is going to be, what did he write? Okay, so he just wrote a couple of hours ago, Nevada has zero infrastructure for mail-in voting. It will be a corrupt disaster if not ended by the courts. It will take months or years to figure out. Florida has built a great infrastructure over years with two great Republican governors. Florida, send in your ballots. So that is an issue. If a state doesn't have the infrastructure or isn't ready for millions upon millions of mail-in ballots or absentee ballots. See, the issue with absentee ballots is the following. If you can't vote in person, you have to explain why. And then you have to be accepted. You get the absentee ballot. It's just different. It's completely different from everyone just getting a mail-in ballot. You have no clue if somebody within your household is filling out the form and voting for anyone. Let's say you're a Trump supporter and, your wife is a Clinton supporter. Who will be nominee or across the ballot from President Trump? It's going to be Hillary Clinton versus President Trump. Again, Trump is going to win again. I will have made the biggest political call of all time. Share my Huffington Post article, Hillary Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. But here, I'm obviously wearing this No Malarkey shirt because it's the only person. I am the only person in all of YouTube. Check it out. I'm the only person in all of YouTube who's wearing Biden merchandise. It's obviously, I'm doing it as, a satirical, hilarious, comedic routine. But nobody is wearing anything Biden because he's not going to be nominee. Even if they really go through with the charade and he goes and gets the nomination at the convention, the whole thing's a racket anyway. It's a charade. Ask Bernie Sanders. They cheated him in 2016. They blamed Russia for 4 years because we found out they were cheating him. That's what the whole thing was. Russia hacked the DNC to inform the country that Bernie Sanders was cheated. But here, I mean, the trend will probably result, this is the New York Times in 2012, the trend will probably result in more uncounted votes, and it increases the potential for fraud. While fraud by voting, so in Florida, okay, So voting by mail is now common enough and problematic enough that election experts say there have been multiple elections in which no one can say with confidence which candidate was the deserved winner. They use the word experts whenever they just want to bolster their arguments. So the experts say, the expert Democrats and liberals and the media, well, experts say this. Well, experts were saying something completely different about mail-in voting and absentee ballots in 2012. Very different. And they were saying something very different in 2016. And so, but almost nothing has been done about the distinctive challenges posed by absentee ballots. To the contrary, Ohio's Republican Secretary of State recently sent absentee ballot applications to every registered voter in the state. They flipped the script. Oh my God. Now they're actually saying this is a bad thing to send mail-in ballots because, mail-in and absentee ballots are the same thing. They're not, but... And the Republican lawmakers in Florida recently revised state law to allow ballots to be mailed wherever voters want, rather than typically to only their registered addresses. So when they think it doesn't suit them, and the hilarious thing will be, President Trump won the mail-in vote. He did a lot better than, or I should say, he did a lot better than Democrats thought he would. And Democrats think that, the polls show that Biden is up, so, the mail-in votes are going to favor Democrats, but it ain't going to be Biden anyway. It's going to be Clinton. Those mail-in ballots are going to be sent in September. They will have already passed the baton to Clinton. They're not going to go with tales from the crypt. I can't believe when people look back at this, I will be the only person in all of the internet to tell you from 2017 until today, the whole thing is a racket, and there's no way on God's green earth that they're going to allow the exhumed body. This man communicates and looks like a cadaver that got Botox and plastic surgery. He looks like Rip Van Winkle's worst nightmare. There's no way they're going to let Father Time go into the debates with Trump. He'd get eaten alive. He would get eaten alive. Like, maybe literally eaten alive. Maybe Trump would literally eat him like a zombie. Just gobble it, oh my God, he ate Biden. Ah! Could you imagine? But, by the way, President Trump, I don't know why he even did that Axios interview, but I explained why he actually did a lot better than Jonathan Swan. Who was simply there to be petulant like most journalists and just petty. And I explained that on H.A. Goodman's other channel. So subscribe to H.A. Goodman's other channel. My Patreon is below if you want to support my voice long term. Ladies and gentlemen, my Patreon is below. Again, I'm starting a newsletter. If you want to be part of the newsletter, it's contactgoodman78@gmail.com. Voters in nursing homes can be subjected to subtle pressure, outright intimidation, or fraud. The secrecy of their voting is easily compromised, and their ballots can be intercepted both coming and going. The problem is not limited to the elderly, of course. This is the New York Times. Absentee ballots also make it much easier to buy and sell votes. In recent years, courts have invalidated mayoral elections in Illinois and Indiana because of fraudulent absentee ballots. So it's unbelievable. Well, studies have been done. You don't need a study to see the possibility of fraud. See, this is what Democrats do. They have removed any semblance of common sense, and the only way they back up an argument or a claim is by an appeal to an authority. Appeals to authority. That's it. Well, studies have showed. There are articles talking about how mail-in ballots have invalidated mayoral elections and how they could be easily forged. I mean, there's an article in the New York Times in 2012. There's an article in Slate in 2016 backing up Trump. There's an article in the Miami New Times here, and So, I mean, this is like, there are a lot more articles, a lot more research anyone can do, because it's so easy to forge a signature. And also the issue is you have millions upon millions of ballots. The Postal Service is even Clinton, basically yesterday, and she's running because every day she's running parallel campaign, like a parallel campaign with Biden. And so she's like, oh, this is Trump's plan to interfere in his own election, to interfere anything. He's going to sabotage the Postal Service. Well, they're the ones who allowed voting in person during the pandemic in Illinois, Arizona, and Florida, and Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, people were getting drenched in a rainstorm, getting pelted by hail, and during a pandemic, all to vote against Medicare for all. Do you understand? To vote against Medicare for all. Biden won all those primaries, and interestingly enough, they don't go by the popular vote in the Democratic primary. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how that works? Isn't that funny how that works? They don't go with the popular vote, but they want the popular vote for the general election. Anyway, in the recent primary here, almost 40% of ballots were not cast in the voting booth. They were split. This, ladies and gentlemen, clarity brings better results. In 2008, Minnesota rejected 12,000 absentee ballots, about 4% of all such votes, for the myriad reasons that make voting by mail less reliable than voting in person. This is unbelievable. It takes a second. Why isn't President Trump tweeting these articles? Maybe because it focuses on the Republican Party or Republicans in certain states, because these articles are against Republicans. But here, the absentee ballot itself could be blamed for some of the problems. It had to be enclosed in envelopes containing various information and signatures, including one from a witness who had to attest to handling the logistics of seeing that, quote, the voter marked the ballot in that individual's presence without showing how they were marked. So everything is Scout's honor. And, I mean, look, you could steal some, okay, there are much simpler and effective alternatives to committing fraud on such scale. Okay, so wait. Election law experts say that pulling off in-person voter fraud on a large scale enough to swing an election with scores, it's hard to imagine. But with absentee ballots, quote, you could steal some absentee ballots or stuff a ballot box or bribe an election administrator, which happened in Philadelphia, with the judge of elections he was stuffing Democratic votes in ballot boxes. Gee, that's interesting. Democrats never cheat. Just ask Bernie Sanders. Ask the Philly judge, who is now convicted. They cheat all the time. That's all they do is cheat. I mean, it's funny, too, because they're so incompetent. They have the media. They have the intelligence community. They cheated Bernie Sanders. They still lost. And listen, they're heading for an iceberg. That explains, she said, why all the evidence of stolen elections involves absentee ballot and the like. Listen to this. A law professor at Yale, there are much simpler and more effective alternatives to commit fraud on such a scale, said Heather Gerken, a law professor at Yale. That explains, she said, quote, why all the evidence of stolen elections involves absentee ballots and the like. My God almighty. Error and fraud at issue as absentee voting rises, by Adam Liptak, October 6, 2012. Share this article everywhere. If you're still on social media, I'm not. I suggest you get off Twitter and Facebook. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And I gave you I read the Slate article from 2016. I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy to simply point out what President Trump is saying is 100% right. They know they're going to have abysmal turnout. Cities have to be rebuilt because of very peaceful protests. Like Minnesota asked for $500 million to rebuild Minneapolis because everything was very peaceful. Very peaceful. Democrats redefine words And it's like an eighth. The Democratic Party is like an eighth grade class that just tries to pick on somebody, and Trump he's not having it. And they redefine words, and everything has a different meaning. These cities have to be peacefully rebuilt because everything was peaceful. And then you have people who are unemployed, millions upon millions. And then you have, so if they do find work, they're not going to skip work to vote for Biden, no, or Clinton, because Clinton is going to be nominee. But the notion, this is a case study into how gullible millions of Democrats are, and how pathetic that political party and the left is. The fact that the left truly believes Biden would be nominee shows that they're just a bunch of lemmings that would just jump off a cliff if told to do so. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Subscribe to AJ Goodman's other channel. I have a great, it's like a half an hour long segment on exactly why President Trump easily defeated Jonathan Swan of Axios, in that this is what they do. All they are is public relations. And then they splice up videos of Trump all over the place, and I don't think Jack Dorsey cares, but, if it's the other way around, oh my God, it's a big problem. Give me your thoughts below. People, President Trump's going to win again, and Madam Secretary is going to do everything possible to make it close. I still think, I think President Trump's going to win. He's going to defeat Hillary Clinton. He's not going to defeat Biden. If Trump falls for any traps, Clinton could still win. But my prediction, of course, is that President Trump goes 8 years. I've said this since 2017, and Clinton is going to be on that ballot. She'll either be accepting the nomination at the convention, or shortly after the convention, they pass the baton, or they transfer power from Biden to Hillary Clinton. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't think they're that inept and incompetent to waste the Democratic to waste the convention on Tales from the Crypt. So it'll be very interesting how they pull it off. I have no clue how it happens, but I will have made the biggest political call of all time. Hillary Clinton is the best candidate they have in the Democratic Party. That is saying a lot. That is saying a lot about the Democrats. Give me your thoughts below. Thank you so very, very much. I just explained in 22 minutes exactly why Trump is suing Nevada. Give me your thoughts.